guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we will take a look at some new JustNoHOA content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first one is titled, How I Destroyed an Homeowner Association. So, some quick backstory to this. I don't live with an homeowner association, thank the divines, but I have had dealings with them. I studied environmental engineering in college and have a degree with a specialization in water treatment systems. Normally, though, that's not my day job. Even so, recently, a friend of mine who works with one of the neighboring cities asked me if I wouldn't mind doing some tests for water pollution in a waterfowl preservation area. There had been some strange die-off events going on, and the city was trying to figure out where the source of the pollution was coming from. I'd be operating under a special contract from the city and was given access to any location along this waterfowl area within reason to perform my tests. I won't go into detail about how the tests work. They're involved, and can be a pain in the ass, but suffice it to say that I started taking water and soil samples from likely sources along the waterfowl preserve's borders. This showed me that there was a notable number of nitrates and phosphates in the water, which I surmised was affecting the birds. Now to find the source. I followed the river up its length, passing a number of housing sites, a couple of apartments, and the odd settling pond. Over the course of several weeks, and a barrage of tests, these were ruled out as sources. The further I went up the river, though, the stronger the concentrations became. To the point that it was dangerous for humans to even be in contact with the water. We're talking Superfund type pollution. This was last summer. As I waded up along this area, I heard some splashing and the sounds of kids playing in the water. Not good at all. Turning the bend, I come face to face with a small dock leading into the water, and 4 or 5 kids taking turns jumping off it into the water. The heavily polluted, dangerous water. There's some lady sitting on the dock watching them, and I approached her. I forget the exchange, but it boiled down to me telling her I'm from the city, and based on some of what had been found, the children were banned from swimming in the river. The lady tried arguing the point, until I told her I was calling the Marshall Code Enforcement to have the area barricaded off, and she could explain her complaints to him. She grabbed the kids and scuttled off. Marshall did arrive, found that the dock wasn't built with proper code standards, and condemned it, forcing the homeowner association who had built it to have it demolished within the week, or the city was going to do it and they'd front the bill. That still left the matter of the pollution. That's where things got weird. Once I passed this homeowner association subdivision, all pollution vanished. I must have done 5 or 6 further tests to verify this, but yeah, no pollution. So, I had my culprit. The next question was figuring out what they were doing. That's where my investigative side comes in. With the help of the marshal, I started going around the properties of the homeowner association, talking with residents. It was a few simple questions like, do you know if they're fertilizing the grass? And when do they do this, and do you know the type of fertilizer they use? Just gathering evidence. Remember the lady from earlier? Turned out she was the homeowner association president. I only found this out after she called the police on the marshal and I, reporting strange men wandering around her neighborhood. She called them something like 4 times in a day before the police flat out told her they work with the city, and if you keep calling, we're charging you. That didn't stop her from following us around in her car and taking photos with her phone. Eventually, we spoke with one older gentleman that broke the case, as it were. The homeowner association president had been fining people for not having perfectly green grass. We were in a drought at the time, so that's no surprise there. After several of the people in the subdivision got fined by the city for watering their grass, she had taken matters into her own hand. She'd first tried contracting a landscaper to spray the lawns with fertilizer, but due to various EPA regulations, he'd apparently refused. The homeowner couldn't be certain what the lady had done next, but a couple days after that, some guys turned up with a large farm-type trailer of liquid and sprayed every single foot of grass the homeowner association controlled. Even right down to the water's edge. With the homeowner's permission, I took several soil samples from around his property, and then samples from the common area that joined the grassy area beside the river and dock. It took about a week to get full results back, but I had my answer. This lady had some contractors or someone spraying farm-grade fertilizer on the grass. This particular fertilizer is heavily controlled by the EPA, and requires a special license to even possess, much less use. I presented all my evidence to my contact at the city, and laid out just how serious the damage was, and that I was legally obligated to report the homeowner association to the state regulatory board for gross violations. My contract took the papers, and paid me for my services, thanking me, but also noting that if this went to court, I would need to testify about my findings. Epilogue. The court was originally scheduled for March of 2020, but it never came to that. The homeowner association president entered a plea deal with the state, where she, and the homeowner association was required to pay for the environmental cleanup of the river, as well as restitution to the state. The fines alone topped close to $250,000, and the cleanup still ongoing is expected to break $1 million itself. The homeowner association president got the boot, while the homeowner association itself was last I heard facing being dissolved by the state due to multiple cases of negligence and inept management. I don't know how they came in contact with that fertilizer, though I suspect some of the charges against the homeowner association president had something to do with that. Want to know the sad thing though? If the homeowner association had simply contacted the city, or the state, they would have been given a list of approved fertilizers to use, which both wouldn't have polluted the surrounding water, and wouldn't have put them on the hook for an environmental disaster. The number is right on the city and state's website. The homeowner association just couldn't be bothered to look it up. The next one is titled, Homeowner Association Hates the Sound of Freedom. I live in a township, so in Ohio, that means I can hunt and shoot on my own property. I also live next to a homeowner association but not in it. I also have some crazy neighbors who seem to think that my property is their property. Example, I live on 2.5 acres, and I would probably say 70% of it is wooded with a large amount of 100 to 150-year-old trees. I had just moved in back in March, and one of the first things I did was walk around the property and locate and remark all of my property stakes to know exactly what mine was. And I also marked all of the standing trees that were dead and needed to be cut down. And then a police car shows up because one of my crazy neighbors that I have caught multiple times trespassing on my property, thinks that my trees are apparently her trees and didn't want me cutting down the dead ones. So, on 4th of July week this year, bunch of guys from work asked me if I wanted to go shooting at a local outdoor range. When I asked what range it was, I told them no, why don't all of you just come over my house and we can shoot for free and not have to drive for an hour to a crappy range? And they asked, well, what about my neighbors? And I said, F them, that's exactly why I bought this property, to do what the hell I want. So, I posted on the local neighborhoods group to give everybody a heads up if they hear a bunch of gunfire on that Friday afternoon, there's no need to freak out. I was just using my range with some friends. And of course, that's when the fun started. There was a good mix of people saying great, wish they could come, and then a bunch of the homeowner association busybodies complaining that I can't do that and that the noise would be offensive, and they have rules against that and so on. Now flash forward to the Thursday before, and I'm out in the yard setting up all of my steel plate targets on my 100-yard range, when I see a police officer, car pull in the driveway again. So, the sergeant says, you can probably guess why I'm here, laughing. And I said, yeah, I probably have a good idea. He says, I just want to start off saying you're 100% right and you can shoot and hunt on your own property and it's not a problem, but since we had a bunch of calls, I wanted to stop out here and talk with you, that way we don't have to bother you at all during your shoot tomorrow. Lol. He says, he just wanted to stop out, introduce himself, meet me and take a look at the range really quick, and everything looked great. So, this way come Friday if they get a bunch of calls into dispatch, they won't have to send anybody out and they can just let everybody know on the phone call that everything's legal. So, Friday comes along and about 6 guys from work show up and we went through probably 1,000+ rounds in a couple hours, from 22s all the way up to my 50 BMG I let them play with. 2 of the guys brought guns with binary triggers, so we were doing some 30-round mag dumps for fun as well. Later that night I go back on the website to see what the posts were like, starting off with sounds like the party started. Along with people whining and witching that they called the police and were told that everything was legal and there was nothing for them to do, and commented with, well, I guess the police won't do anything until somebody shot. Yes, that's right, newsflash, the police don't arrest you for pre-crime. That would be like them pulling you over for speeding before you've left your driveway because you might speed down the road. The next one is titled, Wage Theft Revenge. I worked in maintenance for a religious organization that owned a large number of aged care facilities. Even though they were supposedly not for profit, they went all out to scam the government for as much money as they could. For example, I once saw a claim for wandering behavior in a bedridden resident so they could claim he had dementia, put him in a locked ward and get extra money. I became aware that they were paying less than the minimum wage for many of the non-nursing staff. A high percentage of housekeeping were from overseas and God told them they could get away with it. In my country you can claim back wages for 6 years, and it so happened I was just about to reach that mark and I was thoroughly sick of their hypocrisy. I scheduled a meeting with the care manager and human resources. In the meeting I requested to be paid the correct wage. After they realized I was not going to back down, they agreed to pay me correctly and would back pay me, but only if I didn't tell the other employees. I declined and it ended up costing them over $700,000 to back pay everyone. I was recording the conversation and took them to Fair Work and Independent Workplace Ombudsman. They made everyone with the same job description as me redundant because they couldn't think of a way to legally fire me, and then outsourced maintenance, which ended up costing them much more. I took a nice holiday with the redundancy pay and informed on them with documented proof to the government aged care regulator for the fraud. They were inspected with a fine-tooth comb and 2 of their flagship homes were put under 6 months constant government supervision. Always remember that wage theft is the largest crime wave in history. It is ongoing, and no one ever goes to jail for it. The next one is titled, "Complain About the Deal? No deal for you." I was surfing Reddit and saw a post, "Do not reopen negotiations," and it totally reminded me of refinancing my house 3 years ago. I had bought my house from a lovely 87-year-old woman named Doris. I was previously renting from Doris. She proposed some weird seller finance deal. Basically, she was the bank, and I paid the mortgage to her. And boy oh boy, Doris is a great negotiator, because at the end of negotiations I was paying something like 5.75% interest even though my credit score is over 700. So fast forward to 2020. A friend refinances his house, and he tells me interest rates are super duper low and you can save a ton of money. So, I look around, call a lot of different mortgage companies, settle on one, and it looks like I can go from current payment of $14.95 to $11.50, and the cost of refinancing would be recouped from the savings in about 14 months. I call Doris and she cries, saying I'm sending her to the poorhouse, that I'm awful. I will admit I started crying. This woman would say things like, "I wish you were my son," and drop off black-eyed peas for New Year's. I really liked her. So, I offered her a deal. I'll just refinance through her, and she will honor the rate of the refinance company. And then I did some digging. I was not sending her to the poor house. Turns out she owns 4 houses in my city, and she owns the house she is living in about an hour away. That kind of burned me up inside. And more digging. If you pay your mortgage on time to a bank, it's good. It builds up your credit. But seller finance deals are super dark market, and my credit agencies wouldn't know. And then there's the whole question of Doris' age and what happens if she expires within 30 years. Armed with knowledge and a pep talk from my brother, who is really good at not being manipulated by others, I called Doris, and before I can say anything she goes on and on about, "I don't like this deal, but I'll let it happen because I like you. I hate this and it's really going to hurt me." I finally just said, "Doris, if you hate this so much, I'll just refinance with a real bank." It took about 4 months because she wouldn't disclose anything to the bankers, hang up on their phone calls and claim she didn't have an email address, but it finally got refinanced. The last text I got from her was threatening me with lawyers. Funny how people say "I wish you were my son," but once you finally put yourself first, they forget all the high Christian morals and will swear and threaten like a goddamn Jezebel. The next one is titled, "Stupid Woman Bests Water Department Workers." My ex-husband and I bought our home from his parents. They had the house built in the 50s. For years, father-in-law wanted to install a shutoff valve in the utility room to, shut off the water to the whole house to do some repairs. Plumber told him it would cost a large amount of money because they could not find the shutoff from the city water main at the street, the Buffalo Box, aka water main shutoff valve. Since the Buffalo Box was Mia, they would have to freeze the pipes to stop the water before installing the shutoff valve. It was an expensive process to freeze the pipes, so it never got done. When we bought the house, we decided to get the shutoff valve installed. We called the water department and they sent 2 workers to shut off the water. When they arrived, I explained the problem. They went out to the front yard, walked around a bit and told me there was nothing they could do for me. According to the 2 workers, it was my problem that they could not find the Buffalo Box and that I should call a plumber to dig up my front yard, sidewalk, and city easement to find my Buffalo Box. Well, I have a background in residential real estate construction, and I was familiar with how water mains and buffalo boxes are installed, and I told them it was the city's issue, as they were responsible for the buffalo box, not the homeowners. According to these guys, as a woman, I did not know what I was talking about, and they left. They were incredibly rude about it, but peons like these think they can get away with being rude to an ignorant woman like me. Fast forward to a year or so later. I get a call from the city manager asking why I hadn't paid my water bill for over a year. I told him that I wanted to pay my water bill, but I wanted them to first turn off my water. He was a bit taken aback that I wanted them to turn off the water. So, I explained what the city workers told me about locating the buffalo box and their attitude about women not understanding those type of things. I also told him that if the city could not turn off my water, I would be happy to have free water forever, 'cause I would never pay another bill. We had a nice long chat about the situation, and he said that he would resolve my concerns. The next day, these same two guys show up at my house with some digging equipment and spend the whole day digging up the easement and the sidewalk. Their attitudes were rather somber, 'cause the city manager told me he was going to give them a talking to about how they mishandled the situation. I even got an apology. They found the buffalo box under the city-owned sidewalk. They fixed the buffalo box so it would be accessible and came the next day to fix the sidewalk. They asked if I wanted the water turned off, declined, and I told them I would have my plumber take care of it when we had him install the interior shutoff valve. And then I paid the water bill. The next one is titled, I Live Here. Long story short, retaliating landlord withdrew my lease renewal offer and told me I intended to vacate 2 days before Christmas. My lease ends on the last day of January and I'm spending this month packing and cleaning and caring for my infant and toddler since I had no intent to vacate and wanted to sign for another year to avoid the stress of moving. They have been scheduling showings through a third-party website. They themselves are also a third-party management company for my slumlord. I legally have to allow the manager or landlord into the unit if they provide reasonable notice. They scheduled someone for today and emailed me through the third-party website that they were coming. The email said to contact them if I had any questions, but I don't have any and I'm not about to find myself out on the street early by questioning their life choices. Some poor sucker rang my doorbell. I answered in PJs and a bathrobe and said simply I live here and he practically fled. No landlord. Nobody with a key. I'm really quite baffled. Did they expect me to show people my frantic packing, give my time for free, and host complete strangers at a place I've paid to live in? What if I hadn't been home? Not that I'm about to let someone in without me here with all my belongings here. I don't have enough for people to be able to walk in and take whatever they want. All this for asking when the issues from the last gas leak were going to be fixed.